Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm AndyRC and today I'm going to be checking out the Eachine Novice 2. This is one of the best Toothpick models I have ever flown. However, there is a big but, because just like the Novice 1, it comes in this ready to fly package where the transmitter and the goggles aren't up to scratch. So before you go any further, if you haven't seen my review of the Novice 1, I'll add a card to the top right of the video so you can go and see the shortcomings of this all-in-one package. They have made some changes with the goggles, but I'll get onto that later because this time I want to start off by talking about the model. It's a 1 or 2S ultralight 2.5 inch brushless micro with a dry weight of 51 grams. Its top plate looks just like the Emax Tiny Hawk Freestyle. However, I think the model in general is different enough to be called inspired by the Tiny Hawk Freestyle rather than calling it a clone or a copy, because the bottom plate and components are completely different. And the unibody is using a standard arm configuration with no struts or cutouts, which I always like to see because from my experience they cause unwanted prop wash with a lightweight model that has a bottom mounted battery, and it's usually impossible to tune it out. Speaking of the battery, or should I say batteries, they have added this TPU 3D printed holder which does a much better job at securing the two 1S LiPos, as well as lifting them above the USB connector. They have also either listened to what I said about the LiPos provided with the Eachine Novice 1, or they have just copied what Emax did with their Tiny Hawk Freestyle, but either way I'm excited to say that they have upped the capacity of the 1S LiPos to 460 milliamps. The Novice 1 used 300 milliamp hour LiPos and the voltage sagged to dangerous levels pretty much as soon as you took off. But despite them still using the open-pinned PH2 connectors in series and a copy of the Happy Model Crazy Bee V1 flight controller with the 5A ESCs, the higher capacity LiPos should hold their voltage better in punch-outs. So, unlike the Novice 1, the 10 LiPos that you get with the Fly More combo should last much longer, especially if you monitor the voltage correctly while you are flying, which of course I won't be doing in this video because as a reviewer I have to find the limits of things like that so that you don't have to. With the two LiPos, the model's all-up weight is 77 grams, and in a 1S configuration, using the included plug to complete the circuit, its all-up weight is 64 grams. However, I'm not sure flying this guy on 1S is a good idea unless it's an ultra-calm day outside, because unlike the Novice 1, this is not an indoor model. Now don't get me wrong, a Crazy Bee V3 board and an XT30 connector would be a better setup than this, but it's a big improvement from the Novice 1, and maybe just changing the open pin PH2 connectors to solid pins would be enough to completely conserve the life of these LiPos. In each corner are the Eachine branded 1103 8500 kV brushless motors fitted out of the box with the HQ 2.5 inch dual blade propellers. And you're given a spare set of those along with all of the other extras that you got given with the Eachine Novice 1 package. They actually have a Novice 3 coming out, which is a 3-inch version of this model, and the goggles are the Eachine EV800s. The transmitter is different as well. They will provide a proper transmitter with hobby grade gimbals. Anyways, I digress. As I've already mentioned, the flight controller is a copy of the Happy Model Crazy Bee V1 board, so just like the Novice 1, adding an XT30 is a risk because it unleashes more current to the inferior built-in regulator and underrated ESCs that the Crazy Bee V1 boards suffered when people experimented adding an XT30 connector. Perhaps Eachine have been listening to me, because when it's possible I always advise to find a way to have the built built-in SPI receiver's antenna orientated upright because you get a little bit more range out of them. I mean, you only get around about 80 meters anyways, but you get more range when they are upright. And this model has come with its antenna wedged upright into the top plate. This time I'm not even going to attempt to use the included transmitter because I covered that with the Novice one and it's no good, but I will talk about it later. Instead, I bound the model to my Tyrannus X9D in D8 mode, and with this model you can access the bind button. You couldn't do that with the Novice one, you had to do it through the CLI. I also changed the same things in Betaflight that I changed in the Novice 1 video, except for the rates because they are acceptable with a hobby grade transmitter, and I've kept their PIDs as well. Above the flight controller we have the Happy Model Diamond VTX, which is switchable up to 200 milliwatts via smart audio, and the linear antenna comes out of the top plate. Now some of you are going to be asking, why didn't they mount the lipos on the top plate like most freestyle models? And they could have done that because there's enough room, but the components on this model are relatively low down anyways, so in this scenario I don't think a top mounted battery would be that much of a benefit to its center of gravity, and this TPU mount is really rugged, so you're not properly landing on the batteries either, so I'm okay with it. However, there's nothing stopping you unscrewing the TPU mounts and fixing them on the top because they fit on the same standoffs, but you would have to come up with a different solution for the video transmitter's antenna as it would get in the way. The top plate also has a built-in buzzer, which is rare these days, especially on a model of this size, but it's nice and loud, and there are also some built-in programmable LEDs which you can just about see underneath. Then lastly, up front is the Cadex EOS 2 4x3 version, and it's mounted in carbon fiber, so fingers crossed we will get minimal jello because it's a CMOS camera. Then onto the not so good stuff. The goggles are completely different compared to the ones that you got with the Novice 1 package. They call them the Eachine VR009s, which you can't seem to buy separately for now, and the unusable goggles that came with the Novice 1 are called the Eachine VR005. They're quoting the resolution as 480 by 320, which sounds more accurate, resulting in a 3:2 aspect ratio. However, 16:9 is usually the standard, and the camera on the model is 4:3, so either way the image is going to be stretched. The bottom of the model's on-screen display was cut off as well. Perhaps this is because of this strange aspect ratio, so I had to lift the on-screen display up in Betaflight slightly. As you can see, the button layout is completely different, and the goggles on-screen display is now green and readable, but it does overlap the model's on-screen display still, and it doesn't disappear off the screen. There's also a menu where you can change some more settings, and even though the nose cutout is actually smaller than the VR005 goggles, it has this rounded plastic to stop your nose getting chopped off. The faceplate is slightly rounder as well, but they still aren't comfortable on the face, and you get light leakage through the side, and a lot of pressure is put on your nose when you're wearing them. But the screens do seem to be brighter and have a higher resolution, and I was able to fly with them. However, I was getting a lot more breakup in the video feed than I was with the VR005 goggles, but these are at least usable to some extent. The transmitter, on the other hand, hasn't changed. Eachine tell me that the production version will have elongated sticks for better control, but that isn't the problem. The toy grade pots have a huge deadband in the middle, and there's not enough resolution to properly control a powerful 2S model. So the controls feel like they are either on or off, which is not good for a novice or in fact anyone. So I've pleaded with Eachine to release this model as a bind and fly again, just like I did with the Novice 1, and this time I didn't receive a resounding no. So I think they are realizing that this all-in-one package isn't working. So we'll have to see what happens with that, because unlike the Novice one, you can't buy the frame separately at the making of this video. But it is a new product, so it's worth checking on Banggood, because my advice with the Novice one was to take all of the good parts from the model and make one yourself. Okay, let's go for a line of sight with this guy, and it leaps into the air. I'm starting off in angle mode. I'm not using the Novice controller because, as I discovered with the Novice one, it is absolutely duff. Well, the sun has made an appearance and I can see those LEDs really nicely underneath, and the battery's fitting snug as well. So let's see what the power is like. Wow, loads of power. And I'm not hearing any audible vibrations either. Eachine, I think you've cracked it with the model, but not with the package. You've got to release this as a bind and fly. I think, just as I suggested in the Novice 1 video, you need to go up on capacity, and they have done that. And I don't think the voltage of the LiPo is going to sag. I'm not hearing any oscillations, and I'm not seeing any prop wash. Unfortunately, it is a bit of a windy day here today, so I have a feeling when I fly at FPV that it is going to get knocked around a bit. But on a flat, calm day, Eachine, you may have made the perfect Toothpick style model, but in a package that is just no good for a novice. Please release this as a bind and fly for the more experienced users. Now, I know you've improved the goggles for sure, but that controller will not be able to tame this. I'm using my Taranis X9D here, and I have not touched anything. I've not touched the rates or anything like that, and it's flying superb, at least line of sight. But I've got a really good feeling about this one for FPV, and I think as well with those dual blades we're going to get really long flight times. It's just a shame the package it comes in. Right, have I said that enough? There's no sag. You can't hear the RPMs dying whatsoever. It still won't be as good as an XT30, but these batteries are gonna last a whole lot longer than the Novice I or the Novice 1 because they've gone up in capacity. Brilliant. Right, let's do some FPV with it before it gets too dark. So this first flight was done using the included goggles, but they don't have a built-in DVR. So the image that we are looking at was recorded from my Fat Shark HDOs hanging around my neck. And even though the goggles were putting a lot of pressure on my nose, as you can see, I'm not struggling to fly with them because the picture is much better and brighter than the goggles supplied with the Eachine Novice 1. What you are not seeing is how much breakup I was getting. I mean, it wasn't terrible, otherwise you would see me struggling to fly the model, but it was quite annoying. Just as I suspected, the voltage is holding out much better than the Novice 1. It does occasionally drop into the low 6s, but at least you can control that with the throttle, whereas with the Novice 1, its voltage dropped into the 6s as soon as you took off. To conserve the batteries, you want to make sure that the voltage doesn't drop below 3.3 volts per cell, so that's 6.6 volts on a 2S. But even if you do push it past that, it's only for a brief second, because you'll notice the voltage recovering back to 7 volts, whereas with the Novice 1, it was dropping down to 5 volts on its first punch out, which would kill its lipos in just a few flights. The flight time was pretty good as well. If you want to be kind to your lipos, then you can fly for about 4.5 minutes. I think even on this flight I got about 5 minutes, but when I disarmed the model, its resting voltage was still 7 volts. Then after this flight, I flew with my HTOs and pushed it to a 5.5 minute flight time, but that will start to ruin your batteries. The tune was really nice and the rates worked perfect using my Taranis X9D. You'll see a little bit of buffeting, but that's just the wind. You're only going to get a completely smooth flight with a model as light as this on a flat, calm day. There's also no prop wash or any jello, so Eachine, please release this as a bind and fly, because it is not for a novice and it's an awesome model that's ruined by the transmitter. I'd also add a better receiver to it if they released it as a bind and fly, because as you can see from the RSSI, it's scarily low most of the time. So if you are interested in this model, I can say this: the goggles are at least usable this time, whereas with the Novice 1, in my opinion, they weren't usable. They cut into my nose and they were just so uncomfortable on the face. I have to say though, these goggles didn't last very long. The battery was only good enough for 4 flights before it needed recharging. And if you can take the hit of binning the transmitter for a better one, then I suppose I can see a reason to buy into this package. But other than that, I'll be keeping the model and the batteries, but I'll be swapping the open pin connectors for solid pins and binning everything else. So that is my review of the Eachine Novice 2. I'll put a link in the description if you do wish to buy one, and I'll leave you with some flying. The second flight was done with me wearing the Fat Shark HDOs, and I pushed the lipos to see how long it would fly for, but I don't recommend you doing that. So as always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.
With nothing left to show, we're afraid of where we've been. You gotta let me in. I'm not a mark, barely your friend, drowning in water. I lend you my hand, falling the level, release my regret.
empty hearts and neon lights. They're playing with my mind. Gotta get out of here tonight. Oh, I wanna run off and fly. And I'll tell myself it's fine to be alone, just to find somewhere that finally feels like home. Oh, oh, oh. I hate all this overthinking. Oh, 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 oh. The more I swim, the more I'm sinking. Take me to a world of silver. No more heartbreaks, tears, painkillers. Take me somewhere unfamiliar. Bring me back to where we started out. Get me out of now, to where we started out. Get me out of now, to where we started out. La 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 la, oh, oh. Get me out of broken hearts and starting fights, turning truth to lies. Gotta get up, stop wasting time. Yeah, I wanna run